it's the vibrations, man. You know? It's those frequencies. They're just flying out there. We're all riding them. We could be playing it, but the people they're playing with us. You know, I freaking love that.
Absolutely.
And it's totally healing.
Hey there, music lovers. Welcome to Why Music Matters, a podcast where we examine the power and influence that music can wield in our lives. I'm your host, Jeff Miers. Today's guests are two of my favorite musicians in all the Western New York area, and they also happen to be 2/3 of one of my favorite bands, the postmodern jam-based trio Organ Fairchild. Guitarist Dave Ruch and drummer Corey Kertzie have been playing in bands together since meeting as high school students. They've been a major part of the Buffalo area music scene for decades, but instead of sliding into complacency and plucking the low-hanging fruit, they challenged themselves and their audience by forming Organ Fairchild 5 years back, employing the deep musical bond they've been nurturing for years as a springboard to a fresh, forward-looking instrumental sound. With their latest effort, Songs We Didn't Write, about to drop, and a long summer of local, regional, and festival appearances about to kick off, Dave and Corey took some time to chat with me about the role that music has played in their lives and in their friendship, and about why music continues to matter so much to them at this stage of their careers. Welcome to Why Music Matters, guys.
Well, hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Jeff.
Welcome to Why Music Matters. Dave Ruch, Corey Kertzie, friends, and 2/3 of Organ Fairchild. One of my favorite bands that emerged over the last 5 years, for sure. And just good guys, longtime veterans of Western New York music scene. I wanted to have you here to talk about everything you're up to, including this album that dropped June 7th?
June 7th, right.
Remembered that.
Yeah.
Good coffee. But, the deal with this podcast is we try to get at not just what you're up to, but, like, why we're sitting here talking today. Like, how did you get to this point where music became such a guiding force in your life? Where, after already having careers, you guys then, put this trio together and you had a new career.
Yeah, that's right.
And probably the biggest one, But can we start at the beginning, like, what got you into music? And maybe, I'd like to hear from both of you, like, when did you know, like, I'm going to have a life in this that's going to be, central force in my life?
Corey has a great story about that.
It was to get chicks. No.
It's always a drummer.
Yeah.
My brother was a traveling guitarist in bands, and they used to rehearse in my garage, so I used to sneak on the drummer's drums when no one was around. So that's
so they left their gear set up.
Yeah, they'd leave their gear set up, and I would jam on the drums, and I loved them, and I would play, and I could play, and I didn't know what I was doing, but it was just happening.
Yeah.
And then I would play the 45s, and Long Train Run was like the first song.
Are you serious?
That's
Put
the little 45 on, and I was like, oh my God, this is so fun.
I can
Listen
get
to
through
this freaking song,
that song gives me chills.
Yeah, it's a great tone.
It is.
So I used to play like Eagles, and, and just listen to what
70s music coming up.
Absolutely.
It was a good time to be coming up.
It sure was.
Awesome. So, where to go from there?
So I would just jam all the time by myself on the drums, and then I put them in the attic, like kids do, and then when I got a little older, I had a friend who I met who was a guitar player in the neighborhood, and I go, oh, I got drums in my attic, and he's like, go get them, and then that was it, Then I just started taking lessons and playing whenever I could.
Were you playing in? You went to Sweet Home, right?
Yep.
Were you playing in like jazz band or concert band or
No,
anything like that?
actually,
just at home, like garage band.
Yeah. I didn't do, like I took drum lessons when I was, I think it was like 3rd or 4th grade, and I'd always space out, when my lesson was.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I realized, oh no, and I went down there like, I don't think you're gonna cut this.
Yeah, you didn't practice, I can tell.
Yeah, I would practice at home, but I was always late going there, or didn't show up, or I took lessons from Louis Marino.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and
as a lot of people around here who are lifelong great drummers did.
Yeah,
Louis left his mark.
Love Louis, but that's when I was out playing on weekends, partying and stuff, and so I came in for my lesson, and his wife is beautiful. She was so cool. She would do hair in the front, and then you go in the back room and take lessons. And he had like 2 drum sets, So I came in. He goes, "Hey, how did you do with last week's lesson?" I'm like, "Oh, great." He goes, "I don't know how you did. You left your book."
Nice try, though, Corey.
Yeah, I know. But I did, he really helped me a lot. Like I would practice a lot, but
I remember that. Isn't he the one that taught you how to read also?
Yeah.
Louis. What about you, Dave?
For me, I tried guitar when I was 12 through like a church group. I just had this inkling that I might want to. It was something I might want to do, but it was like this real wide neck nylon string guitar, and the music they were teaching was not really turning my crank, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it didn't last long, and I just figured, well, okay, I'm not a guitar player. So then at 15, we used to spend our summers up on Lake Erie in Canada in a little town called Silver Bay outside of Shirkston, not far from Crystal Beach. And so you'd see these people for 3 months every year and then not see them for 9 months because it was a summer community. Yeah. So I came back as a 15-year-old one summer in May, and my friend John Bryant had learned how to play guitar in the preceding 9 months. And he knew how to play Stairway to Heaven. So I thought, I'm probably never going to be a guitar player, but if I could just learn how to play that one song, like I could be like
a rock god.
Oh, I could be the hit of every party I go to. I could pick up a guitar and play Stairway to Heaven, right? So he tried to show it to me, and of course it's not a song for beginning hands. I had never, I hadn't touched really a guitar since age 12. So he was like, well, you're going to have to just learn some basic chords and get your hands used to playing this thing. So he taught me like a D and an E minor or something. And,
good start.
And hey, you could play Neil Young's Heart of Gold, the intro to that song with these 2 chords. And like, that was it. Like, I just never stopped playing after that. I just like, wow, I can sit here by myself and play this thing that, music has always deeply resonated inside of me. I just, my earliest memories are the radio, and back then, AM radio, even before it was FM, it was incredible. It was like,
the level of writing on even the pop tunes on AM radio was
exactly
ridiculous.
You're going from Paul McCartney to the Spinners to Otis Redding to Yes,
and that felt normal.
It felt it was all music, So yeah, and again, like I think when I was starting to play, it was never about like sort of aspiring to do it for people or on stage. It was just like, wow, I can sit. Yeah. Because I was always kind of an introvert and a geeky and a little shy. So just the ability to sit by myself, like in my room or outside with a guitar and actually like play stuff that makes me happy was like I just never, I never wanted that to go away, and it never has.
So
thankfully.
Ever since that summer, it was in you, and that was
absolutely,
that, right?
Yeah. And then I needed a guitar. I kept like borrowing my friend John's guitar every day. Hey, can I use this for an hour?
That sounds so familiar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you finally get one.
I finally get one, and of course, it was a piece of shit, but it was like my baby.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Did you buy it or your parents?
My parents, we were like looking in I don't know if it was the swap sheet or the Buffalo News classifieds or something. We found a cheap, like $80 acoustic guitar. And I had that was my first guitar. I had it for over a year until I realized, I started taking lessons, and all the teachers were like, ooh, yeah, you might want to. You're not doing yourself any favors, trying to learn on this thing.
You're battling yourself to play this guitar.
Yeah. So then it was to Edwin's Music Store.
Yeah.
Did you ever go to? Well, you weren't here.
Edwin's was still here. I got here in 1990.
Okay. So then it was Edwin's for my first electric, which was a Strat copy. That I used to plug into my stereo because I didn't have an amp.
That was like, I had a little PV Decade,
Okay.
And it had the saturation feature, so
that's all you needed.
Sustain.
Right. Yeah.
But the guitar was it was like a no-name knockoff of a Les Paul Jr.
Okay.
Garbage, but it was mine,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most beautiful thing you'd
Your
ever seen.
ticket to the universe.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. So, you guys have known each other for a minute.
Wow.
Talk about, meeting each other and, the early part of your career, because you guys were definitely tied together. And
Dave has a good story.
I do.
Any story that involves Corey is always funny.
Oh, it's so good. When we were 16, I already knew who he was because he was sort of playing around with some guys that I tangentially knew from high school. So I sort of had seen him play once or twice, and I knew who he was. And then when we were 16, we were both outside of this gas station in Williamsville called Save Mart on Sheridan Drive. And he didn't know me from Adam, but I sort of recognized him. And at that age, he was already like a fully fledged. He could pass for 18, which is what the drinking age was then.
Right. He had you had long hair.
Yeah.
Long hair. I remember some fringe
jacket,
and boots, and I was a dweeby 16-year-old.
Cowboy boots.
Yeah, I was
Did he
always
look
short.
like Richie Hayward from Little Feat then? Because I still think Corey looks like Richie Hayward.
And I was 16, but I looked like I was 13, And so I was with a friend, and we wanted beer, we wanted to get beer. So I'm like, oh, I bet he could buy us beer. I didn't even know. I figured he might be 18 years old. I was like, hey, do you think you could buy us some beer? And he doesn't remember this at all, but because he didn't know who I was. But I've told him this story 100 times now. And so he bought me beer as 16-year-olds. He took my money, went into the store, got us beer, handed it to us, and away we went. But then
I don't know what year it was, but it just reminds me of being young.
Yeah. That would have
outside.
been probably 1980.
Yeah, makes sense.
Around there. So then just a couple years later, he was already playing in the band Wild Nights. Mm-hmm. And I came over for an audition. They needed another guitar player. That was the summer of '83. And so that's when we sort of first met and played music together. And definitely has been happening ever since.
Yeah, it's amazing. So talk about Wild Nights. I wasn't here then, but my brother-in-law told me so many stories. My brother-in-law, Joe, who Corey,
Yeah. Joe Muffaletto?
Joe Muffaletto.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He'd be like, dude, those guys were like gods to me. You go see them and be like, oh, my God. And I have other friends who were here during that time, and it just sounds like those shows, people were into it, right?
Oh, yeah.
You guys were playing big shows here.
I remember playing Nietzsche's one night, and I'm playing it, and I see kids smash the windows. They had, Joe had them boarded up with wood, and they pushed them out, and they're all crawling in on the balconies on the side.
Oh, that is so awesome.
And then after that, Joe said, I can't have you anymore.
Yeah, he said, I've never made so much money in one night, and I can't have you guys back.
Yeah, I can't have you. Yeah, and it, always, back then, everybody would run out of beer, remember?
Yeah.
They'd all be scrambling.
Good crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but how long was that band together? How long were you both in it?
I started like, I think 82, right? Because we played South. That was like the first Wild
Right.
Nights.
I was in attendance for the first Wild Night show. I wasn't part of the band yet, but I was at the gig.
Were you like what I said? My brother-in-law said. Were you like, oh my god?
Well, it was just, for people our age at the time, it was like, wow, these guys are really doing it. There's a professional PA system here. There's, any playing I had done to that point with other people was like in somebody's basement.
Yeah.
And so Joe was in the band
Yes.
too, but you didn't really meet Joe yet.
No,
Joe Bellotti.
no.
But we would do like a Dead song, and then we did Dodo Lurker.
Oh, that's awesome! You guys.
Yeah,
Dude, it was
well, there was
great.
a lot of
So-
Genesis.
A lot of Genesis.
Wow, so it was progressive,
Pico.
like, not just Grateful Dead, etc.
Yeah, because later on, Joe's, I remember we would do I Know, or Scarlet and I Know What I Like.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was really neat.
Yeah, no, it wasn't strictly a Dead thing. It sort of
No.
became more that. Like by the time we got into like the late '80s and early '90s, like Mike Bellman had become part of it around '84, and he became the lead guitar player. And he was really like zeroed in on that Garcia kind of sound, So he was buying the right gear. He was studying the tapes. So it really did kind of morph into more of a Dead. I don't know if you call it a tribute or a cover band. I don't know the distinction.
I like to
anymore.
call, a cover band's one thing, but like a tribute ensemble, kind of. You know what I mean? Because with that band and subsequent, you guys were not. You were playing the songs and playing the parts right? But there was a searching improvisation that was unique to the players in the band.
For sure.
And that makes it different to me than a cover band. I think that's why people
Yeah.
still do it. Because there's still discoveries to be made in that music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Corey pointed out to me one time, and it's so true. I think we were talking about maybe like doing a gig on the same night as another Dead band was playing. You always try to avoid that locally, just so you're not splitting.
Can't
the
be
crowd.
done in 2024 though. There's too many.
He said this to me, and it's always stuck with me. He said, I kind of view it more like a genre now, like jazz. Like on any given night in New York or Chicago, there might be 10 jazz bands playing.
Right, and somebody's playing on Green Dolphin Street, or whatever.
Right.
And
And approaching
somebody's
it very
playing
differently.
Scarlet Fire here, and in every other city.
Yeah. And everybody has their flavor, right? Different flavor to it.
Yeah, I like that about it.
Yeah.
Do you guys have more to say about that? I know we all, we're all bonded over our love for the Dead, but that's not the entirety of what we're interested in music or anything. But there's something special there. When did you get into that, and what made you think it was special?
Well,
Did you go to a show?
if you don't mind if I...
Yeah, go.
A good friend of ours just passed away, and he was the double drummer in Wild Nights, DJ Bonin, and he kept on pushing the Dead on us. And then I would go over to his house, and what's so cool about the Dead is it's like if you didn't know who the Dead were and you were listening to a bootleg, you're so used to hearing good quality albums.
Yeah.
You weren't listening to Genesis bootlegs and
No,
tapes. There was
no.
no tapes going around. And I'd be like, God, it just sounds so noisy,
Rough.
and then he made us go see the Dead. And I went to Rochester 82 War Memorial, blew me away. And then all those tapes came to life.
Yeah. Then
I
you
could
get
hear
it.
That's cool.
what it was. And so DJ, he's changed my life. I would have never met Dave, through this. And I love the Dead, and I tell everybody, I'm German, French, and Grateful Dead.
I like that. Can I use that?
Yeah, sure.
Irish, Polish, and Grateful Dead. Nice. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, DJ's the one that brought me into the band as well. For me, with the Grateful Dead, it was this real mixed experience where I think my sister, who's a year and a half older than me, had bought the Shakedown Street album. So that's 79 maybe.
Yeah.
I remember hearing it and thinking like I'd seen the Grateful Dead's name. I had some friends who were starting to get into the music. But what came out of her turntable when she put that record on was like, oh, this is the Grateful Dead?
It's
it was
not
like,
what you expected.
yeah, because that's sort of like their quote unquote disco album. I mean, there's at least like Shakedown Street has a very disco feel, and Good Lovin's very poppy sounding. I thought, this is a Grateful Dead. So then,
I love that album though.
oh, it's great.
It's
yeah,
amazing. But it is.
Yeah. And it was just kind of like, it didn't quite make sense to me. So then the next thing I think I did was, as part of one of those were you a member of those record clubs back in the day, like Columbia House, RCA, where you'd mail away and you get 10 for a nickel or something, and then you'd have to
I did it so many times.
buy a couple. Yeah, same. I figured out ways to do it multiple times under different names.
My brother.
Yeah. So I thought, well, I got to figure out more about this Grateful Dead band. So I got that double record. It was black. Forget.
It's a like a sort of
maybe a
compendium of
compilation.
greatest hits of.
Yeah.
They had like a red design on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I had that too.
Can't remember the name of the album.
I can't either. But
It was
I
a
know what you're
compilation.
talking. Yeah. And it was a pretty early one, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so I put that on, and then it's like, whoa, all right, that doesn't sound anything like Shakedown Street, you know? And now I'm hearing country, and now I'm hearing real psychedelic, you know, primal rock and roll. I'm like, what the hell is this band, you know? And then by the time I was in later in high school, junior year, let's say, just they were always on at parties, live tapes.
Right.
And I was like, okay, that at least had a more uniform sound, because you're hearing them at one stage in their career doing one thing on stage. And I love the variety of the tunes. You know, I've always been interested in American roots music, so blues and country and bluegrass. And, you know, you can obviously hear all of that in their music and so much more. Yeah. And Jerry Garcia's guitar playing, I mean,
it's pretty singular.
For me, it's just so special, and so, you know, he plays like a horn player would play to me, and I just, so head over heels at that point. Yeah.
Did that lead to what became increasingly a part of your life later and still to the present day, which was, you know, being a roots music historian, educator, and entertainer? I mean, you
probably in some ways, yeah. I would think so. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, that was the first time I ever was liked country music. Is really when I heard like Europe '72, and I'm like, these are country tunes, and if these are country tunes, I like country music. You know?
Right.
And
kind of
really,
like what Billy Strings is doing right now for bluegrass.
I mean, yeah.
There's people who've never listened to bluegrass before that are now head over heels for it.
Isn't that cool?
It's great.
It's really cool.
Wonderful.
So if you guys, I don't want to belabor this, but, you know, we could talk about this. Like, it's a good thing there aren't any beers here, or we'd be going on for 4 hours. But what about like sort of immersion in the Dead? And it's like, once you're in, you don't really leave, right? You're still into it.
Oh,
right?
For sure.
Totally. Yeah. Well, what did that teach you about music, about playing with other people, and about different genres of music that you carried forward in non-Dead related, you know, situations? Corey, I know you're super into. We share our love for a lot of the best progressive music, you know.
Yeah.
It's not really like the Dead, but in a way, I don't know.
The Grateful Dead kind of like helped me relax and go, okay, I can play a song. You know, like I can, you know, Fire in the Mountain, for instance. I'm like, oh my God, we're playing a song, people are listening. And then it made me go, okay, I can go do other stuff. You know, like Genesis, I think Yes, the album was my second album that I bought when I was younger. And
Bill Bruford.
And I'd listen to it and go, I could never do this. But the Dead helped me go, yeah, you can. Yeah. Go ahead.
I love that.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
What about you?
Kind of similar. I think the overriding philosophy of what they do, I mean, it is an approach that's more akin to jazz music in the sense that, like, you have the head or the form of the tune, but then there's this big wide open section in most of the tunes, and you can kind of do whatever you want there. And that is the part of playing that music that I think I've taken into other things that I've done is like, and that's what I always am kind of looking for, no matter what kind of music I'm playing, is like using the music as a springboard to, on a good day, really express whatever it is you're going through that day.
Yeah.
But even when you're really kind of just fighting to get some music out, which happens, sometimes it feels a little effortless, and sometimes it feels like it takes a lot of effort.
You're working at it.
Yeah, sometimes you're fighting the instrument, and sometimes it's helping you. But I think just that approach of taking a song and, like you're saying, as opposed to like Yes or Genesis, where it goes this way and you need to play it this way.
You're not messing with that arrangement.
There's so much freedom in the music to kind of take it where you want to take it. And then the whole listening, again, as an analog to jazz music, if everyone's really listening, then it can go off into some really fun places that no one member of the band could have had the foresight to take it to, or inspiration to take it to, but together as a six-headed beast, or a three-headed beast in our case with Organ Fairchild, that I love that. I mean, and that's what keeps it fresh for the musicians and hopefully for the audience too.
Definitely, never the same way.
That's awesome.
Twice. I always thought the Grateful Dead were a great argument for how democracy could work. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I always was like, if more people really studied this, and everyone's not going to be a musician, but the metaphor is there to me, because when you're there, you have to listen. If you don't have something worthwhile to say, you lay back and you listen, right?
Yep.
Then something arises, right? And then we get to a place, as Dave pointed out, we would have never gotten to as individuals,
right,
without all of us.
Yeah, love that.
I'm sorry, I'm a hippie.
Yeah,
but there's something poetic about it.
Absolutely.
It's so neat, because like with the three of us, all of a sudden Dave will start doing something so cool, and also be all right. I'm listening to guitar right now.
Yeah,
and I'm just playing off it. I'm not thinking, oh, what could I do? It's just happening.
Right.
And I'm riding on this cool thing Dave's doing, and then he ends, and then you hear Joe pick up something. And all of us just, like, it sounds like we planned it and wrote it out, like, this is what we're going to do. It's ridiculous how many times all three of us, like, hit stuff together, and it grows, so cool.
We were looking at each other the other night in Cincinnati, just like who is this band that's playing right now? Like, we were hitting some.
I'm a fan.
Yes. Like, I would actually really
night.
Be enjoying this if I was in the audience, which is not always what's going through my head when I play.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's special and rare.
Yeah,
it was. We just knew it was going to be a good night.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about that. I mean, you guys both prolific, have done a lot of projects. Corey, you were on the road, different bands, a lot. Organ Fairchild, for some of us, like, I'll only speak for myself, I guess. I was surprised, like, not that it would be great, but that it was, like, basically, like, based on the organ trio model.
Right.
It's funky, and it's really bluesy, and it has like Jack McDuff and Jimmy Smith and these organ trio, people I worshipped. But it also has like some Steve Cropper and kind of, Booker T. How did you land on this? I mean, instead of a bigger ensemble, how did it come to be like, we got the makings of a killer organ trio here that can also jam?
It happened at Dinosaur Barbecue.
As so many great things do.
I know.
When they used to do music downtown.
I know, I loved it.
The three of us, Joe, Corey, and I, were on a gig with our friend Dave Teal.
Yeah.
Guitar player, songwriter. And I think it was just the four of us were the band, and Dave left the stage. We were sound checking.
There was a bass player, what's his name? He went down to
Pablo?
Pablo. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Pablo.
Yeah. and Dave. Sorry.
So for whatever
cool.
reason, Dave and Pablo had left the stage. It was like after sound check or whatever, and the three of us were still up there. This was 2019, probably. And we just started farting around with something. I don't even remember what it was. And it was right then that I had this idea, and I called them like a week later. As we were playing, what's going through my mind is like, this sounds pretty complete. I wonder if like just the three of us, because it's such an easy camaraderie between the three of us.
It goes deep. It was already there, right?
Yeah. And I remember the thought was like, I bet this could be a full band, just the three of us, if we got Joe to play the bass. That was that was the part
Did
we
you
had
stop smiling for a second?
Right,
That was suggested?
exactly. That was the part we had to fill him in on. By the way, Joe, you're going to play two instruments.
He sounds like he's been doing it his whole life.
Yeah. So that was the night that I guess the idea popped into my head, and then I reached out to these guys a little while after that, and I think they were both maybe a little like, huh. I mean, you can speak to how, like, maybe we could try that, and that's how I remember the beginnings of it.
Right. Yeah, I was excited to get together. And then, so we went over to Dave's house and got together, and we started playing. I was like, this will work.
Yeah, I think it was a question mark in all of our minds. Would this actually work with just three of us? Can it sound like a full band? Because certainly one of the real benefits of a trio is like there's dynamics galore. One person starts playing softer, the other two hear that, and you go.
Yeah.
Versus a six-piece band where one person can almost completely stop playing and the whole juggernaut just continues. This is like and that was something really appealing to me about it. Is just the small format, meaning you can turn on at dime.
That's what we hear like last weekend. Great dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The band was about that, like, immediately, it seemed like.
Right.
Yeah, well, you kind of had to be.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other part of the question in my mind was like, how hard can it rock? Can it actually rock, or is it always going to be this sort of more subdued sort of trio thing? And that's another comment we get quite often. It's like, I can't believe how much sound is coming out of three people.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in a nice room like a Buffalo Ironworks with a big PA, and it's like
good sound man, nice
good
room.
sound. Yep.
Open-minded crowd.
Yep. Yeah. It's just been so fun.
It's so easy. I love it. It's like a dream come
You're
true.
not supposed to admit, it's so hard, but we get there.
Well,
it's like putting on your
we
favorite
have plenty
sweater.
of difficulties, like
Well,
working out tunes, and there's nights
sure.
when you're fighting it a little bit, or it's just not gelling the way you want it to. It's not like it's easy 100% of the time, but the overall feeling amongst all three of us is like,
right?
this
It
is
feels like natural, you guys.
Yeah, and even when we're fighting it, we've learned to just be like, tonight's we're fighting it.
Yeah.
So
right.
what?
Yeah.
Who
Keep
cares?
going.
Keep
That's
going.
another lesson you can learn from the dead. They
They'll
can't all be zingers.
That's right. In fact, you're gonna have some real turkeys. Yeah.
Incredible. Now the sort of I wouldn't call it obviously has proven not to be a limitation, but the idea of like the kind of parameters that come with it's just going to be the three of us.
Right.
Did you find that like sort of liberating in a way? Like I've heard you guys have people sit in, like Mike Answer from Aqueous at last year's Borderland, and it totally works. It's amazing, but it's different, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It does change it up.
Yeah.
Very quickly. So, as soon as you hear somebody playing, if we had a percussionist or we had a sax player the other day, but that works sometimes. It's music, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And you can't control it. And,
You just get on the bus.
It's
Go
like,
with it.
So true.
Yeah.
And the other obvious parameter we've put on it is that none of us are going to sing in this band.
Yeah.
We all have sung in other projects, and so that too was just sort of a forced, just a conscious constraint we put on it, just to see, can we come up with original material that's entirely instrumental? Can we hold a crowd without singing?
That was really the first time I saw you. I was like, wow. And then, these tunes totally work. I've always loved instrumental music in a, that's in addition to jazz, but it's like it's its own, I guess it's like sort of broadly rock instrumental music, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Were you surprised at the reception? I personally have felt like with bands like Krungband, and there's a lot going on right now where like if there's vocals, they're not often, and people are becoming really receptive to this. I mean, I always loved that, but I think it seemed like the right time.
Maybe.
You hope so.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a certain percentage of people that it's just not going to resonate with because they're more focused on lyrics, and that's fine. I mean, that's what it is. It's been super encouraging, the amount of support we've gotten so far, and the fact that people keep showing up, and we've consciously been expanding into new territories and markets, and it's really fun to watch what happens there where no one knows us. Here in Buffalo, we've all been playing in town for 40 years, so you always see familiar and friendly faces in the crowd. But when we travel, depending on where we are, there might not be a single person in the room that's ever seen us or heard of us or anything before. So that's been really fun to watch.
It's exciting.
What happens in those situations,
It's great. I love playing out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's necessary too. Like, talk about that a little bit though, because you guys, like, you've done some festival stuff. You got, regionally at least, on the road pretty quick. Was that like as soon as you guys felt like this is good, let's book some out of town shows too? Is that how it happened?
What's so funny is when we were younger, like with Wild Nights and stuff, I was thinking we're going to take this on the road.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to.
Nobody in the band,
Yeah,
Wow.
Everybody was going to college, and so when we got this together, I'm like, boy, this would be fun to take it on the road. Dave's like, absolutely. I'm like, yes.
Finally, it was worth the wait.
And I can't believe we were like Joe, I would have never imagined to go on the road, and he freaking loves it. Loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, you're right. Like when I was that age, I was in a couple of bands. Wild Nights was one, but then Acoustic Forum was another one that used to play at Broadway Joe's. You came and wrote a wonderful article for Art Voice all those years ago. Some of the guys in that band had the same feeling. Like this was sort of right before Leftover Salmon became sort of nationally known, and we were doing a very similar thing, like kind of a revved up bluegrass thing with
smoking,
electric bass and drums and really hot instrumentalists. That would have been a great thing to take on the road, but again, there were people in the band, myself included, that weren't interested in doing that at that time, which is funny. So it's like, we joke about this all the time. It's like such a sort of reversal of how things normally go, where people, when they're young, they want to go out and be on the road, and then when they're old, they don't. We just laugh all the time. We're all going to be, the youngest one of us is turning 60 this year, and yet we're now packing into a tiny little van and laughing our asses off,
hitting the road,
driving around, and it's so funny to us that
I always say, I'm like, there is nobody in the world that is close to 60 who decides to do original music, no vocals, and we're close to 60.
And get in a van and go,
let's hit the road, guys.
It's
right,
so
like who does that? That's hilarious.
But it's so comfortable, and it's like, I mean, we laugh so hard in the van, and they got Dave came up with these great games we play, it's just...
Oh, God, we hit on one just like a half hour before we got back to town the other day. We had been on a little 3-day jaunt to Columbus and Cincinnati and Indiana. And we were not 30 minutes from being back at our cars, and we somehow hit on this Organ Fairchild Jeopardy game that... Oh my God!
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So the category is flaky promoters in XYZ town.
Oh boy!
And then you phrase it as an answer, and people have to, just
That's brilliant.
just like Jeff.
That's brilliant.
Oh God,
I'm sure you're going to.
We're like, I want to keep driving. I don't want to
go home.
What sound guy had the worst breath? What city?
Right. This sound man in Savannah, Georgia, had a breath that could knock over a buzzard. Who is,
I'll take sound man with halitosis for 1,000.
Exactly.
Oh, we were dying. Like,
That is hilarious.
yeah.
Oh, you guys entertain each other.
Yeah.
That's
But
Now-
we decided to get on the road pretty early.
Yeah.
Once we saw that, wow, this is really fun, and
the response has been
has been
really
great.
positive.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And part of it too, like kids are kind of growing up at a time where you kind of,
Yes.
I stopped touring when my son was born.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was.
And
yeah.
now he's off touring, and I'm like, well, I can do a lot more now,
Right.
theoretically. But yeah, I mean, it was the right time for that, right? For you guys.
Absolutely. Totally.
It's pretty cool.
Just wild how life works,
It is where music leads us. The sense of humor that you guys share, the Leisure Suit album, I thought was a great example of that. The guys are all dressed like a Stanley Roper from Three's Company, and just the most hilarious clothing, and you just all look like you're cracking each other up.
Oh God!
I mean, that is a beautiful thing. But can you talk about that specifically, that album cover, but also that how that sense of humor can really bond you guys?
Yeah. Well, that was Joe. The album cover was Joe's idea.
It was.
We had a song called Leisure. We have a song called Leisure Suit that we've been doing since we first started as a band, and it was definitely going to be one of the tracks on the album. And we were sitting around at an Airbnb somewhere, and Joe came up with the idea like we should call the album Leisure Suit, and we should all appear on the cover wearing leisure suits. So for anyone younger than 45 years old who's watching this right now, you may not know what a leisure suit is, but did you own one, Jeff?
Sort of, because all of a sudden in early 90s it became popular to go shop for that stuff at thrift stores.
That's
again.
true.
And
That's true.
it became kind of alternative rock wear for a while.
True.
But I don't think I ever wore one non-ironically.
Ah, okay. Well,
But I think I haven't
definitely
really
did.
lived,
I
because
think
it just
Corey
looks like a
did.
blast.
Yeah, all three of us had them as kids.
That's awesome.
It's just how your parents got you dressed up for a certain.
Yeah,
thing.
so I guess I did. Yeah, bad sports jackets, and
Yeah.
slacks. Sure,
Yep.
as a kid, definitely.
Lots of polyester.
Yep.
So so we all cobbled some leisure suits together for the album cover, and then we played in them for our album release show, which was great.
Now, this new record, which is songs we didn't write, which I just think that's hilarious, and reminds me of the never-ending battle in Buffalo, but everywhere, probably in every music scene, between like people complaining about people who play other people's music, and then you only have integrity if you're an original band,
Right?
And why don't people support original music? We've all heard this a million times. You guys are coming out and covering a really cool list of tunes that I'm assuming are just stuff you totally dig, or like, this would be weird, let's try this. Tell me about how it came about. And I love that you're doing a Bob Marley tune.
Well, it was Dave's son's idea.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So Dave showed up to a gig, and I think we were in Pennsylvania in this outdoor place, the brewery.
Big Rail. Yeah.
Oh, it's so
Grove City,
great there.
PA.
Really?
Go to Big Rail Brewing if you ever get
Yeah.
a chance. Yeah, great spot out in the woods.
Oh, that
it's
sounds
just
super cool.
magical.
Outdoor stage. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
they just built a big one too. The stage.
very cool.
Remember that
Yeah.
stage? Yeah. But Dave comes and is just like, we should do a all cover album. And it was right then and there, and then Joe just started
Oh, he did?
turning
Yeah.
the gears.
Yeah.
The list is amazing.
I guess it was my son's idea in the sense that, like, in between. So our first two records are all original music, except for one. There's one cover on the second one. And my son was just like, well, in between, like, until you have enough material for a third album, you do all these covers. People love them because obviously it has to be our own spin on these tunes.
Yeah.
We're not singing them. We're arranging them in a trio format, so they come out sort of sounding like us anyway.
Absolutely.
He was like, why don't you guys do that? And I sort of had it kicking around in my mind for a while, and then I just asked these guys, what do you think? And they were like, sure. They always say, sure.
Yeah.
I love it. It's just so easy going.
It is. Like, that's what I love about these guys. Nobody's afraid that, like, nothing gets turned down. We at least try it.
We've all been in, I bet all three of us have been in bands where it's the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Agreeing on a rehearsal night is like the death of hope.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Right,
about.
yeah. We also have the vote. We have three guys. So
Yeah.
there's always the like, well, let's see what Corey says.
Right.
I love it. The guys in Rush always used to talk about that, like about how, well, with the three of us, it was like, well, it's going to be unanimous or no.
Right, yeah.
And that works.
Yeah.
But talk about some of these tunes in particular. Them Bellyful, like, I love that song.
Me too.
And it's a powerful tune. A big part of its power is the lyric.
Yes.
Incredible. I mean, he's one of my favorite lyricists ever. But just as important is the melody, the groove. I mean, Carlton Barrett, I don't need to tell you guys.
Absolutely.
Right.
So how tough was it to find, your voice in that and also, like, tell the story without the benefit of lyrics?
It was definitely his idea to arrange it the way we did, as sort of, it's got more of an African feel than it does a reggae feel.
Yeah, because
that's where everything
we
came
tried
from.
reggae feel first, and
Yeah, and it just sounded like three guys who aren't reggae musicians
It's such a fine line.
faking their way through reggae.
Everyone thinks that's easy.
Oh, God.
Not easy.
Nothing could be, yeah. So it was him, and we had it on the list as one that we wanted to potentially do on the album. So we were in sort of pre-production where we're going over all the tunes, and he was like, well, let's try it this other way. And bam. I mean, I love the way that came out.
yeah, me too.
I've always thought that your playing had a lot of African percussion influence. You're so in our uncarved block. I mean, all this stuff. I like.
Appreciate
and the way you play Dead tunes is like. Well, I'm not going to compare you to Mickey or something like that because I think you have better time. But
he's German, French, Grateful Dead, and African.
Yeah, all that. But there was just always an element of like sort of almost a Peter Gabriel, Last Temptation of Christ soundtrack with those beautiful, like, for want of a better term, world music percussion sounds.
Yeah.
It's always been. Am I on target with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's Gabriel all the way introduced that, and Mickey obviously did, and
totally.
Paul Simon. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's and I had a friend who owned Zelt's Trading Company, Lorna. She was from South Africa. Do you remember that, next to Brennan's?
No.
In Transit. And she really introduced me to a lot of African, not only like the technique, but the spiritual side. And like there's different, like Kaki Lamba, it's called, is an African rhythm that is a healing rhythm, and just, and I used to go drum in her store with all her friends, and then we ended up going to schools and teaching stuff, and it was really cool, man. So but I was doing 6/8 when I was younger,
right?
And I had no idea what I was doing. For some reason, I just felt it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever count estimated profit? Like, nobody counts it, right? But it's 7.
Yeah,
right,
it's 7.
Yeah.
It's a weird 7.
I have
but
to
it's
count
7.
parts of it.
Yeah. But I always
Little
felt like you were
reminders.
just, the feel was there,
Yeah. It's crazy when you can do an odd meter and it doesn't sound like
That's the whole
like
key,
I think
right?
that's pretty neat.
Yeah, you felt it naturally. Yeah, I love that. You mentioned, the healing properties of certain musical traditions, and drumming is definitely deeply tied to that. But what about in general? I mean, is it too hippy dippy to kind of say, in my own life, I found that music has hugely healed me, you know. Particularly, you know, like, well, you know, around 2016, like leading up into a pandemic, and really for the first time in my life starting to feel like, my sunny optimism isn't doing it for me anymore, and I'm not sure I do think most people are good at, you know, inside. I wrote an album and recorded it, and it just, all of a sudden I just felt back to myself again, you know what I mean? It was
that's so cool.
It's a place to put it.
Yeah.
Do you think, I always have believed this, but I don't know if it's true, that in a broader way, you know, music can do so much healing for society, you know, and for our culture?
I certainly do, yeah. I mean, 100%. I mean...
Is that
for both myself and for when you see an audience sort of throbbing together and moving as one, it's like, that's all the evidence I need. I mean,
there's nothing to fight about.
Yeah, and it's such a universal, you know, doesn't matter, you know, people in Russia and people in Venezuela and people speaking, you know, hundreds of different languages. You know, music hits everybody. It's a universal thing. It's a language that we all understand, you know, and I mean, it's been very healing for me for sure, and it's a real fallback sometimes where if I'm feeling a little funky or whatever, down or whatever, like it almost always, you know, brings me back.
That's a gift, man.
Yeah.
I think that answers the question why music matters.
I feel so lucky.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel so lucky. I say that to these guys all the time. Man. Like, I feel bad for people that don't have it in their lives.
I do too.
Or aren't able to make it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of live music fans, they're getting the same juice from the other side, you know?
Totally. I mean, we have a mutual friend, Paul Urbanski, you know him from gigs.
Paul.
A dear friend, I love him. For someone who doesn't play any instrument and always says, I don't even want to, I have never seen someone that's so immersed in music.
That's cool.
So into it. Yeah. And every day, you know, like we are.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't have to be a musician to benefit from music's power. That's pretty cool.
No, not at all.
It's pretty cool.
It's you know, with the Dead, it's like Jerry taught us what we don't necessarily know the keys, but they would hint the songs, and they trained everybody's ears.
Yeah.
Because people are like, okay, I know it's that shakedown, like, so they, you know, because they be kind of playing around with it, you know, but it's the vibrations, man. You
totally.
know? It's those frequencies, they're just flying out there. We're all riding them. We could be playing it, but the people they're playing with us. You know? I freaking love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's totally healing.
I feel like Chris Farley right there. That was awesome. Remember that when he interviewed Paul McCartney? Yeah. Remember when you made Sgt. Pepper? That was awesome. That. So the record, vinyl.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know where I'm supposed to hold it up.
Wherever you are, you're being.
There's
cameras everywhere.
We should
Dave.
send a huge shout out to the guy that does all of our design, Greg Meadows, who's a Buffalo guy,
amazing,
absolute graphic genius. He usually has ideas right off the bat for anything we want to do. For this one, he's like, well, it's an album of cover songs. Like, I said, I know that doesn't give you a lot to work with. And he was sort of like trying to pry me for other themes. And I was like, well, there's not really a theme to like the tunes we chose, just that we like them.
Yeah.
So he immediately comes back with two completely different concepts for the album cover, both of which were amazing. One was like, let's show a library of albums. Like, these are songs, like, this is the well you guys go to pick cover songs from. I love that, and he did some mock-ups. And then he's like, or we use the asterisk, because, like, you know, most of what you guys do is original music, so if you were saying here's a cover song, there might be an asterisk next to it saying it's a song we didn't write. You know, right? So like the asterisk becomes the visual.
All right, that's genius.
Element of the album. Yeah,
That's
it's
genius.
just it's absolutely.
And also,
incredible.
speaking of immensely talented people from Buffalo, Alan Evans.
Yeah.
Amazing drummer, co-founder of Soul Live, and now great producer, mastering engineer, etc., working in Massachusetts. God, I love that band. What about Alan? I mean, he's super cool. Corey, you got that one?
He's like, this is the third album we've used him. He's got phenomenal ears.
It's ridiculous.
And he's so easy to, like, if you want to change something, hey, yeah, no problem, So cool.
Yeah, we've had some stuff mastered elsewhere and compared it to like what he's done for us, and it's like we always just like his mastering better. Mm-hmm. It just sounds full, fat. And a good part of that also for our last two records is the recording engineer, Justin Gweep, who's in the Hudson Valley. Yeah. He pretty much mixes. His final mixes are almost completely like where he wants to hear it after it's mastered. Do you know what I mean? Like his final mixes are so full of body and already.
And the mastering engineer loves that.
And the mastering engineer likes it, and they just add the final sweetness to it, and the final sort of chunkiness. So yeah, that's like a dream team, using Justin to record and mix, and then Alan to master.
Love it. So what about this summer? Touring. I know you both said you have a lot of gigs coming up. We're going to celebrate this.
Yes, we are. Yeah, I don't, depending on when this is going to air.
I don't know, but let's talk about it anyway.
Okay.
It could be before.
Okay.
I'll try.
There's a show that hasn't been announced yet that's going to happen on June 6th, which is the night before the album comes out. It's a free show in downtown Buffalo, and that's going to serve as our album release show. So
amazing. People
can grab it a night early before it hits all the digital platforms. If this were to air tomorrow, I don't think I can say where that show is going to be.
It won't be airing tomorrow.
Okay. All right. So that's at Fountain Plaza.
Excellent.
The one that got rained, you were there last year. It got rained out after about 4 tunes or 3 tunes. Yeah. So that's going to be the album release. And yeah, summer has a lot of festivals, out of state, in state, a lot of other shows. And the fall, we're going to go back to the Midwest for probably a couple weeks. And then we're working on a year from now, 10 months from now, next March, doing a huge tour out west to Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah. Everybody keeps telling us Colorado, like everybody out there will love
the right vibe.
Really like what you guys do. So, those are kind of some of the plans.
Pretty exciting, man.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you guys spending some time with me.
This was fun.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Totally appreciate you and what you're doing.
We should do it way more often.
I hope you realize what an impact you've had on the local music scene
I appreciate it, man.
Between raising a person who is now traveling the world playing music for people, for big audiences, and all the journalism over the last, what has it been, 25 plus? 30 years?
Yeah.
Huge impact, and we're all better off for it.
I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
I really do.
And like all that, which is amazing, but just knowing you and hanging, it's like, it's like icing on the cake.
Right on, man.
And playing a show with you next month?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I don't know when this is going to air, but I can't wait to play with you guys. It's super
It's going to be
honor.
fun.
Yeah.
We kind of put together a new ensemble, but all three of you are in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
And here's to many more. And thanks for sharing, a bit about what music has meant in your life, and for making this art that is really uplifting to all of us. A hell of a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you.
Elevating our scene.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Corey.
Thank
you guys
you.
are awesome.
Take care.